And the Auditor General Karen Hogan joins me now. Good to see you again, and thanks for taking time to speak with me. I appreciate it. Look, I'll get to the problems you uncovered in a moment, but first, tell me why. Here we are just a third of the way into your mandate. You're openly venting your frustrations here with the lack of government action on long-standing problems. What's happening?
Well, it's really great to be here again. Thank you for having me. You're absolutely right. I started off today by expressing my frustration instead of my hope in that when we look at long-standing problems, we often, all too often, find that progress is slow or non-existent. And today's reports are a repeat of that. And the reports today, whether they impact offenders or veterans, are impacting people. And it's really unacceptable that long-standing commitments be left unaddressed.
The government always says it will take your recommendations seriously and will do better and make changes. A bevy of ministers came out after your reports today and actually suggested, look, there's already been progress on some of your concerns since you carried out your audits, and in some ways pushing back against the concerns you raised today about lack of action. What do you think of that reaction?
Well, I say that I measure progress in improved outcomes for Canadians, and we didn't find any improved outcomes we looked at. I agree that there has been a lot of activity, especially when it comes to processing of veterans' claims, but Veterans Affairs Canada was unable to demonstrate to us whether all of that activity actually improved processing time or slowed it down. I don't consider that improving outcomes for Canadians when veterans are still waiting 39 weeks to receive benefits.
Right. Well, the Minister of Veterans Affairs actually sort of took issue with that today, saying, look, we had 23,000 veterans in the backlog, so over in that 40-week period 2 years ago. Now it's down to just around 10,000. He describes that as progress. How do you describe it?
I think any file that you're able to process and provide a decision to a veteran is progress. But I also measure progress against the standard that they publicly tell veterans they should expect to wait. They're telling veterans that you should wait 16 weeks or 4 months. And what we found is that veterans were waiting 39 weeks or almost 10 months. That's an unacceptable amount of time to wait to find out about your benefits.
Okay, let's shift to your findings about Corrections Canada, the prison system's failure to take steps to deal with the systemic racism and barriers you found in an increasingly diverse population. Is there an acknowledgement from Corrections Canada, at least, that what's happening is wrong and that it needs to be fixed and that it will get fixed?
So prior to our audit, in response to the clerk's call to action, the commissioner at Corrections Service Canada had actually acknowledged that systemic racism exists in corrections. What our report did was follow up on some very concerning findings in 2015, 16, and 17. And we found that progress hadn't been made on those findings. And in fact, in some cases, the outcome of offenders had worsened. For example, especially Black and Indigenous offenders who are placed in maximum security institutions at twice the rate of other offenders.
The Minister of Public Safety, again, responded to today saying, look, he's on it. New programs are being a deputy commissioner to look specifically at Indigenous incarceration, how to change that. Basically saying we're going to get this right this time. How much faith do you have that real change is on the near horizon?
Well, I'm hopeful for Black and Indigenous offenders that real change is on the horizon. What we had seen is that the tools and the processes have existed for decades, and that they need to be revalidated or even dramatically changed in order to adjust to the change in the diversity of the offender population. And when you sit back and look at the outcomes and you find differences along the lines of race or ethnicity, it's clear that those tools are not as neutral as they should be.
If I can say so, I mean, there's an overall theme, I think, to your reports today and to the comments you're making today and some of the things you've said that, the really, vulnerable populations we know, women we know, are high on the government's list of priorities, but the actions to deliver change, you would suggest, are failing those groups. So do you believe the promises of change are really serious, and where should we look to demonstrate that seriousness?
Well, you're right. Our reports today highlight that certain vulnerable groups, whether they be women or Black and Indigenous offenders or vulnerable populations trying to access benefits, or veterans, where we saw that women, Francophone, and RCMP veterans were waiting even longer than the average veteran to receive benefits, is actually unacceptable. So, is the promise a good one? I really hope so, because I expect better from the government, and I think all Canadians expect better from their government.
All right. Auditor General Karen Hogan, always good to talk to you. Thanks again for speaking with me tonight. Take care.
Thanks, you too.